Hi everyone, it's Wes, and we have Madie Murray again on the line from the Orcas Island Cider and Mead Festival. It's an annual event, and she's going to give us an overview of what the event's like, and then we're just going to ask a bunch of questions about what the event's like and what people are going to experience when they get up there, and then some more questions on the general industry of cider and mead in the Northwest, and then some fun questions on her personal efforts and the challenges she may have faced and unexpected benefits she's experienced in doing these festivals and launching them. So, Madie, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Yeah, if you could give us a great an overview of the event and its setting on Orcas Island and what to expect, that would be great.
I'd love to. Orcas Island, as you know, is one of the San Juans, so getting here is an experience in itself. You come by ferry or by plane or by private boat, and it's usually a beautiful trip up here. And once you hit the island, you can rent a moped or a bike, or if you have your own car, that's great. And you'll come into the main town of East Sound, and right in the center of East Sound is the Village Green, which is a lovely park right in the middle of town with a beautiful stage, an award-winning stage where we have our bands set up. And then for the Cider and Mead Festival, you'll see a huge white tasting tent, and that's where it's all going on as far as our festival is concerned. And anybody who comes here will enjoy an extremely beautiful day on Orcas Island.
So an award-winning stage, you mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Who exactly is giving out these awards for stages?
It was an architectural award, to be quite honest with you. The design of the stage was done by an architect who lives here on the island, and all the crafting of the stage itself, which is held up by two beautiful cedar trunks, I guess you'd describe it as. The whole thing's built out of local cedar wood, and it's just a beautiful stage, very unique. And the architectural review committee of somewhere on the mainland recognized it as an award winner, and so we were really tickled about that.
Yeah, I've seen the photos, and it does look pretty cool. It
It
almost
is.
has a Native American feel to it, and kind of crossed with a log
Yeah.
cabin, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's covered so the musicians stay dry if there
Yes.
happens to be any weather that weekend.
Well, we're expecting a good weather. It'll be a little cool in the morning, which is usually the case, but no wind. And I think as the day wears on, probably by 11 o'clock, noon, about the time we start, it should be really nice, and I suspect even some sunshine. So it should be a perfect day.
That's great. And so demographic-wise, the ages of people you're expecting, obviously you have to be over 21 to do any of the tasting of the cider or mead. Is it a lot of young people, middle-aged people, older people, or you get the full spectrum? And what kind of music are you playing to keep everyone happy?
We do expect a full spectrum. Over the few years that we've been doing this, it would be hard to give you a real demographic, but probably primarily 30 up. I don't get too many that are close to the 21 age group, but there are a few. And then, of course, the older folks love ciders, and they love to see the renaissance that's going on. The type of music that we're playing is everything. The local bands that we have for the event, we always try to get Orcas Island musicians. Although we're open to bringing some from the mainland, it's often not very easy for them to do that. But it's real. We have wonderful talent here on the island, and it varies everything from Celtic fiddling music to soft rock to boogie to just fun oompa music. One of the bands is a horns. It's all horns, and they literally march through the crowd while they're playing, and that draws the fans in really nicely. And there's picnic tables and everything all over the green, so people can sit and listen to the music while they have a little lunch. because there are food vendors at the farmers market, so they can come to the cider tent and have a little cider and then have some lunch, listen to some music, come back and taste a few more ciders. And the event itself usually lasts from 11 a.m. to 4, so there's plenty of time to just kick back and enjoy.
And so are there food vendors on site, or are you planning to have those in the future?
There, the farmers market will always have food vendors in the farmers market, and the tasting tent on the village green is perched right next to the farmers market. So it's just one big event, and so that everything you need and want is right there.
So cider and meads, I've seen them get more popular. Actually, I've only seen cider get more popular over the past several years, but kind of along with the whole microbrew revolution. But I'm wondering more about mead. Are we going to start seeing that more in convenience stores and liquor stores? And also, could you give us kind of a history of cider and mead?
Meads actually predate both beer and grape wines. It's simply a fermented honey. It's believed to go back as far as 7,000 BC in northern China. So it's the granddaddy of them all. And they even think that Neolithic people made mead long before inventing writing. So that's how far that goes back. Ciders, on the other hand, are much younger, perhaps more like 1300 BC, when apple trees were discovered along the Nile. And I guess the word is that Julius Caesar really loved it. But what happened, especially with ciders and meads, they were almost went extinct in America, especially. Ciders and meads are all over the world. But in America, they were pretty well wiped out during Prohibition. In fact, a lot of people actually cut down their apple trees for fear of being arrested because they thought that the government would think they were brewing ciders. So unfortunately, it really suffered, and it took quite a long time for it to come back. But over the last decade, which you're kind of referring to, we've probably seen the biggest rise in cider tourism and cider festivals in the U.S. that we've ever seen before. But an example of that, just for the Northwest Cider Association, was formed in 2010, not that long ago, with just a few members and maybe one festival. But in just 3.5 years, they now have 42 members and are involved in about 10 festivals year-round. And that's just the beginning. I know it's going to continue to grow. But what's also happening is that ciders are now being invited to wine and beer festivals. So now you're looking at a trio, the ciders, the wines, and the beers. So there will continue to be a great interest and growth in the cider and mead industry. But meads, yeah, a lot of people probably don't think about meads when they think of ciders. Ciders obviously are generally apples and pear. The pear ciders are called pairings. But meads can be played with a lot more, probably, I guess you'd say, than your ciders, because they are basically fermented honey and water. In fact, they think that it was probably discovered way back when accidentally a jar of mixed honey and water was fermented by wild yeast. I mean, this is way back when those Neolithic years I was referring to previously.
And is the mead itself, is it a carbonated thing, or is it sparkling or not, like wine?
Some can be. It all depends on the processing. It's just like ciders. Some ciders are sparkling and others are not. Some ciders are or meads. Meads generally are pretty sweet. Ciders can be somewhat sweet or very, what we call dry, like dry wines. They're a little more on the tart side. Some are like champagnes. And they have about the alcoholic content that your wines do. In fact, some of them, it's very much the same as wine alcohol content. And it's all a natural fermentation process.
And so I saw on the website you have many different producers or cider and mead companies coming to the island and around at these events. Are these mostly Pacific Northwest companies, and are there any from Orcas Island or right near around the San Juan Islands?
Yeah, Lopez Island has participated almost every year. There's another one on San Juan. I'm trying to think. Westcott Bay is on San Juan Island. Others are in Port Townsend. Our festival invites, or actually only has participants from the Northwest, and we have had some from Canada. Cider has participated occasionally. So we'd like to get more coming from Canada, but that's definitely a trip to come to Orcas Island from Canada as well. But, yeah, we have them from, and as far south as Chico, California. And as far north right now, probably Bellingham.
And so most of these cider companies are just kind of small to medium-sized businesses or entrepreneurials that have started up in the past few years?
Most of them. There are some bigger ones. Aditum is a pretty large one. But, yeah, they're small to middle. And Westcott Bay has been around, but it's small. Titan Cider Works is a pretty large one. Then there's others, Honey Run, Honeymoon. Eagle Mounts in Port Townsend, family-owned for a long time. It's a really neat, eclectic mix of producers.
What percentage of the visitors do you say are home brewers themselves, and they're coming to talk with the brewmasters? And that's it. I guess that's another question. The people who are there, are they more just salespeople, or are they or do they call them vintners? What do you call the people who produce the cider and the mead?
The people offering tastes are the producers or reps that repuser. The people that come, that's a good question about a percentage. I've never asked the people that come whether they do it or not, but I think you'll find that a good many of them do make ciders at home, which is perfectly okay. You can home brew ciders and meads without a problem. In fact, we have a homebrew competition of Orcas Island home brewers that is quite fun. And last year we had 16 entries. We expect more each year. The last year was twice, 2 times more than we had the year before. So they're coming out of the woodwork, and it's really neat. And the more you talk to these people that come to or produce ciders, the more you learn that there's a culture in our population that is really into brewing or home brewing ciders and meads.
That's great. That might be an interesting addition to the event, would be kind of some workshops and that kind of thing.
That would be a wonderful addition to the event. In fact, in the farmers market, they are going to be having a demonstration of cooking with ciders and meads. So that's another area altogether. I mean, you'll find cookbooks now and recipe books on how to incorporate ciders and meads into your menus, as well as pairing ciders and meads with what you're having with your meal. Like they do wines, this wonderful Chablis will go very well with this, whatever you're having, dessert.
Right. And so I understand some of the restaurants are participating or try to participate. Can you tell us how that goes?
Yeah, during the weekend, many of our local restaurants do incorporate ciders and meads into their entrees that they're serving, and or recommend pairings of ciders and meads with the entrees during the weekend. And that's a real neat thing to experience while you're here, especially for this weekend.
And they can find most of the producers that are coming there in the tent, or just additional ones, or a mix?
You mean the restaurants, what the restaurants are offering and what will be available at the tasting?
Right, yeah, when they're doing the pairing, and will all the same ciders and meads be available that are at the event, or just some select few that they've chosen?
I would suspect not all of them, because probably have 60 to 70 varieties of ciders and meads in the tasting tent.
All right.
Each
Wow.
producer brings 4, 5, 6 different ciders and meads with them for tasting,
Gotcha.
and the restaurants would not be buying all that's there. Um, we do though during at the tasting tent we have certain ciders and meads that are for sale and can be taken with the people that visit the tasting tent for off-site consumption.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess that's another thing. You'd probably find some, off-island restaurants and or purchasers who, frequent these kind of events for deciding what their restaurant should be carrying, and, networking in general.
I think you're right.
It's a fun way to spend the weekend on the job. Put that on the expense tab, right?
You bet. You can write it off.
So yeah, I guess the original idea to host the event or launch the event, can you tell us about the genesis of that?
Yeah, I can. A fellow here on the island who's very involved in business and asked me, and a longtime resident of the island, asked me if I would like to do this type of event, knowing that I am big in the farm to cafeteria program, and I'm always looking for a fundraising situation for our farm to cafeteria program. So he asked me if I would like to do this event, and I said yes, and the rest is history.
And so he had basically thought up the idea, or the general idea, or presented a few ideas, and you chose one and went along with it.
He did. Actually, he was starting to have ciders and meads in his business, and so he wanted to promote that as well. So it was a nice symbiotic thing, and I loved the idea, um, and it's taken off very well.
That's great. And is it difficult to launch events like this? If someone else has the idea that they think would be awesome, or if they're in another city in the Pacific Northwest or town and they'd like to do one of these, what advice might you have for them?
Um, it's becoming more challenging because when we had our first festival in 2010, it was the only festival in the Northwest during May. Most of them were in the fall when the apple trees were producing, so it was more of a celebration or a harvest celebration, where now there are several, and our biggest challenge is probably getting the producers to come to ours or to include our festival in their plans every year. Um, I've been working on this for 6 months, and I expect to have about 16 producers, or at least 16 different producers offering taste. And I consider us very lucky. And then, of course, you have to get the word out, all over, and convince people that Orcas Island is the place to come over all the others. So, and then you have to pray for Mother Nature to smile on a nice day. So there's lots of challenges, and it is hard work, but when the day comes and after it's all over, you really are it's sort of gratifying that to see everybody had a great day, and the artists and the farmers and had a lot of people there, and the restaurants and inns were full of happy people, and you had a little bit to do with it. It's a nice feeling.
That's great. Yeah, so you mentioned before approximately 400 to 500 people attending the event, and so you'd probably consider what percentage of those would be people traveling specifically for that event that would not have come to Orcas Island otherwise.
We're finding out We're getting answers to that question more and more each year. Last year, about 17% were visitors from off island staying on Orcas for the weekend or longer.
Hmm.
I expect this year will be closer to 20-25%, but really won't know until we are taking a survey, hopefully going to survey everybody who enters the tent and ask them specifically those questions, and it'll be interesting to know how we do this year.
Hmm. And the cider producers, do they get a break on lodging when they come into town, or how else do you incentivize them to come up there, or is it just being on Orcas Island and seeing the place is enough?
It's interesting. This year, I did offer to find lodging for producers that are sending either coming themselves or sending reps to pour for them. Um, and I didn't find that I got more that way. I think just coming to Orcas Island, I think it's great, and I would continue to do that. And I think what's really neat is some of the local residents offered a guest house or a room in their home and to host a producer or a rep. And I think that's neat to bring the community together with the industry as well. But it seems like that wasn't a deciding factor. It was just a very nice thing to do, and I'll continue to do that. But it's just coming to Orcas Island, I think, that brings the ones here that come.
Right. Well, and the audience that also is there for them to present their goodies in front of. So
Yeah, and it is
yeah.
it is probably one of the biggest ones of the Northwest Cider and Mead festivals
Hmm.
as far as
And
number of people coming and attending.
right, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, the farm to cafeteria program, we'll have to cover that one on a whole nother conversation. But maybe you can give us a quick explanation of what goes on with that.
Well, the Orcas Island Farm to Cafeteria program mission is to connect kids with local farms and with local healthy organic foods, and to present as much local organic meats, produce, fruits, veggies in our school lunch program every day, every school day to our public school kids. Um, it, it has all the components. It has a school garden. It has local farm participating. It has scratch cooking of fresh food in the school cafeteria, and it has a farm to classroom component for grades K through 8, where the kids spend or a week, or in grade 7 and 8 case, they have 2.5 hours of an experiential class where they learn all about farming, gardening, food, cooking, and everything you wanted to know about good, healthy food and good, healthy bodies.
Very awesome. That sounds like we should have had that in our high school lunch program. So do you use this Cider and Mead Festival as a way to get support for the cafeteria program?
Yes, the Farm to Cafeteria program is supported entirely by community private donations. It is not funded federally in any way or by the state. Not yet. I mean, hopefully someday there will be um, seeing some help, but right now it's just all up to the community and fundraising events that we have all year long, and this is one of them.
Well, that's great. Thanks again for your time and answering the questions. We look forward to talking to you again soon about upcoming events and that cafeteria program.
Thank you, Wes, very much. I love talking about both of them.